Come, fly with me, Gachinya.
Everyone knows that in the first Inside Out movie, Pixar planned to have more than a dozen emotions. But did you know that in Inside Out 2, some emotions were also cut? Jealousy. Just like in the first film where emotions like trust, pride, and surprise were cut to avoid too many characters, in the second film, other emotions also had to wait for their moment in Riley's control room. And one of these emotions, confirmed by the film's director Kelsey Mann to have been scrapped from the movie's plans, was jealousy. About this emotion, specifically, it was cut mainly for two reasons. Firstly, the production team found the character too heavy, completely different from the other emotions that appeared in the film, as she had very negative intentions. Unlike all the new emotions, including anxiety, it was hard to find any positive points in jealousy or a way for the script to find a motivation for the emotion that could ultimately bring something positive to the film's narrative. To understand better, jealousy basically functions as a desire that something or someone belongs only to you and no one else. This would apply, for example, to Riley's parents, her friends, and all her belongings like hockey sticks, clothes, school supplies, and everything that belonged to the girl. Regarding these negative aspects, some of them the Pixar team thought would be better transferred to envy, but with a more childish tone for the character, focusing less on possessiveness and more on things others had that Riley might want for herself. So the second reason for cutting this emotion was also to avoid confusion between how the audience would perceive the two emotions, which have similarities. Therefore, Disney decided to keep only envy, focusing more on what Riley didn't have rather than what she had and didn't want to share, which would have been exactly the case with jealousy. But jealousy was just one of several emotions left out of Inside Out 2. Check them all out right here! Now let's talk about an emotion that was supposed to be in the first film, but like all the others was cut so the film could focus on the 5 main emotions. But it was so beloved that it was also planned to be a part of the new group of emotions, yet it was cut once again. We're talking about shidenfra, a completely unique emotion that only exists in the German language, as you might have guessed from the name. This emotion is basically that feeling we get when, for example, we see someone else's misfortune and end up laughing. For example, that small satisfaction you feel when watching videos of people slipping, falling, or getting hit by a bucket of water on their head, that's all shidenfra. And even if you deny it, we all have at least a little bit of this in us. Otherwise, those America's Funniest Home Videos wouldn't be so popular, right? And you might be wondering why this emotion has such a big name. The answer is because this giant name is actually a combination of 2 words, the first being Scheiden, which means harm, and Freude, which means joy. So, roughly translated, it's something like joy in the harm of others, of course.
Your cries of pain amuse me.
The problem was that the team realized Schadenfreude would actually be a morally questionable emotion, mainly because it involves finding pleasure in other people's suffering, even though sometimes the feeling is seeing someone getting what they deserve. So it really makes sense that they chose to leave this out, at least in these first 2 films, where the issue of morality was carefully considered in the scripts. So every time you laugh at something and then feel bad about it, you'll understand why Disney cut this emotion from the film. And you, have you ever laughed at someone else's misfortune at least once? If the answer is yes, comment #yes below. If the answer is no, comment #no. And no lying, alright?
Yeah, that hurt. It felt like fire. Oh, it was...
Okay, don't think of that. Let's try something else.
Shame. Another emotion that ended up being cut from the film was shame. This was one of the emotions that even had its design developed by Pixar animators themselves, like Schadenfreude, but in a more advanced stage. This is because in leaked images from the company's workspace, we could see an emotion represented by a gray girl wearing dark clothes. About this emotion, among all those cut from Inside Out 2, it was the one that came closest to being used, as scenes with her were even produced, as we might see one day when Pixar releases those scenes for us. But the creative team, after watching the draft where shame would be present, concluded that the character would be difficult to redeem. This is because, as you'll see at the end of Inside Out 2, it's clear that all emotions actually want what's best for Riley. According to Kelsey Mann, the film's director, he said that the gray and moody emotion was always part of the original idea for the film until it didn't make sense anymore. This is because shame would be the emotion that would make Riley feel completely inadequate, as if she didn't measure up to other people. The emotion would end up being responsible for the girl feeling a kind of deep inferiority complex, which ultimately wasn't considered suitable for Disney standards, and so she was deemed uninteresting for the film. Also, like with jealousy and envy, Pixar believed that shame and embarrassment together would confuse viewers, making them unclear about the difference between the two, since both would make the girl want to hide. But with shame having a much deeper impact on the girl's life than the big pink guy. Therefore, part of the inadequacy feeling that shame would cause was passed on to anxiety, and she ended up being completely cut from the final film project. Guilt. Now, let's talk about a character that was also created to appear in the first film, and later was considered for a significant role in Inside Out 2 as well. We're talking about guilt, a male emotion whose design, at least in the first film, was somewhat inspired by a strawberry. Similar to shame, the main function of this emotion would basically make Riley feel down, guilty about things that might have some relation to her even if they weren't her responsibility. Guilt would be responsible for our protagonist spending a good part of her time apologizing even when she shouldn't, so it also falls into the category of emotions that wouldn't bring many positive things to the film. But still, he would be more useful than shame, since the emotion would leave Riley to self-criticize when she actually did something wrong. So he would indeed have his value in the plot. However, as an extra emotion that wouldn't be so relevant, Pixar decided to streamline the number of emotions. Additionally, the character initially had a design somewhat similar to embarrassment. Therefore, he also ended up being benched among the emotions, at least for now. And to ensure you don't feel guilty later, go ahead and subscribe to the channel now if you haven't already. That way you won't miss our next videos. And speaking honestly about guilt, if he were in Inside Out, I believe he would be responsible for helping Joy in the old emotion save Riley after being banished by anxiety. Because, if you think about it, he would end up feeling guilty for what he did to the old emotions, and then realize that anxiety, even with good intentions, was doing more harm than good to Riley with her actions. So, for sure, I think this is one of the cut emotions that was missed the most in the film and would have had a very important role, especially when the emotions went to Riley's belief system. Maybe he would fit in very well in place of ennui. Who knows? In Inside Out 3, right? But there's still one more emotion that many believed would appear in Riley's second film, but didn't happen. We're talking about courage. One of the theories that circulated the internet the most, especially after the trailer revealed that indeed anxiety would banish the old emotions, was that one of the possible emotions that would help Joy and the other emotions find their way back to Riley's belief system would be courage. And if you stop to think about it, it really makes sense, since courage is an emotion that we all need and don't always have. But we would definitely need much more. So amidst all the difficulties and pursuits that the emotions went through in this second film, he could very well be that emotion that would help with elaborate plans and adventurous actions. Not that the film lacked any of these things, but who knows, they could have given an upgrade with this emotion, right? Additionally, due to its common characteristics, he would be an ideal leadership partner to stand alongside Joy, and who knows, even be a duo with her, just like embarrassment and sadness. It would be really cool to see Joy having a dance partner for her craziest moments. Courage would definitely be an emotion that would add a lot to an Inside Out film. Who knows, if Pixar sees this video and ends up creating this idea, right? I've never asked you for anything, Pixar. But we certainly can't complain about how Inside Out 2 turned out, as it really is one of the best Disney Pixar films in recent times, no doubt. If you agree, you must also enjoy Disney movies and animations. That's why we're leaving 2 very cool videos for you to check out. They were chosen exclusively for you! Click on whichever you think is best and keep enjoying with us. You'll definitely enjoy them a lot.